The Dukes of Dice are brought to you by Game Toppers, the St. Charles Convention Center, and listeners like you.
Welcome to the Duchy. It's time for another episode of the Dukes of Dice podcast, a proud member of the Dice Tower Network.
Coming to you from the Duchy in the Duke City, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the Gateway City, St. Louis, Missouri, it's The Dukes of Dice, a podcast about board, card, and probably not role-playing games. Today, Alex recaps his Geek Way to the West experience. Then the Dukes review Arc Nova from Capstone Games. Finally, they'll take a look back at Alex and Abby's review of the rival networks. And now, The Dukes of Dice.
Everybody, welcome back to the podcast. This is Sean.
And Alex.
And you're joining us for episode 275. Boy, that number seems really significant, but it's not really. Which we're calling ZooTube, which I think, Alex, is a reference to a little-known internet video site that kind of, gets a bunch of videos together. I think it's called YouTube. Have you heard of that?
Yeah. And Sean, I will say, I think I found myself watching most of my content, the vast majority, on YouTube itself, compared to all other platforms.
Yeah. No, I do too. It's very weird. It is very, very weird. Let's come back to that a quick second. So yes, ZooTube, we're naming that with help from our friend, Steve O'Rourke, the Name Father. We're talking about Arc Nova, a zoo-themed game. And then we're also talking about the rival networks, which is about television networks. So yeah, that's a perfect title. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate that. And actually, we get help naming all of our episodes from our Board Game Geek Guild. That's guild number 2008. We've got some runners up, which we'll tell you about at the end of the episode. Here's something I think about quite often, Alex. I've always loved TV, especially when I was younger, high school. And I remember, so there was a time in my life when I was working very hard at getting admitted to the Air Force Academy. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be an astronaut, wanted to be an Air Force pilot. I had secured a U.S. senator who was going to give me a recommendation. And then I decided I didn't even want to go that route because my depth perception was not good and I could not be a pilot, it turned out. I wound up speaking with the daughter of the head ophthalmologist for the Air Force. It was a weird thing. But one of my big concerns, if I ever got admitted to the Air Force Academy, was that you were not allowed to have a TV in your room until you were a senior. And it was stressing me out so much so that I'm like, okay, how many hours of television do I have to make my mom tape for me? And then will I have time on breaks to watch all those tapes? Just stupid, just a stupid. And then especially with the way things are now, have I told you this before? When Star Trek The Next Generation was on TV, I literally taped all the episodes off of TV. Yes. And edited out the commercials, pausing it on my VCR as I'm recording. And to think that it's just now, because I'm like, oh, how will I ever see these? And are they ever going to put them on VHS? Oh, they put them on VHS, but they're $200 for a season or something crazy. And now it's just all Star Trek all the time on demand. It's interesting. Not game related or anything related, just weird stuff.
I have two non-game related things.
Okay.
So Ruby update. Ruby is had her first set of school photos taken, which apparently they had a hard time doing, but they turned out pretty cute.
Cool.
And is now crawling in sort of this weird hobbly, limpy kind of way, I guess would be the best way I'd describe it. But she's moving. She's mobile. She's getting there. So we've got some baby proofing to do this weekend. Stat. And then I'll mention, Sean, my other hobby that lobbies for my time with between board games and this hobby. Hockey. I was out on the ice yesterday and was going for a puck and was going into the boards too fast, lost my balance, spun around and didn't go head first, got tangled up, was okay, except, and I'll show you, Sean.
Oh boy. That's a nasty little slice.
That's a skate. That's a skate mark that caught me on the wrist. My own skate. It's sort of a weird image. I don't know how it quite happened, but it's definitely what happened. My own skate slashed it Luckily enough, it wasn't too deep of a cut, but got some Bactine spray on it immediately and bandaged up and gauze and all that fun stuff. So it's fine. Everything was fine. I played after that, but not good.
No, not good. Yeah, that looked like a nasty one. Well, Alex, I think we need to jump into this because this is going to be a super packed episode, and let's get to it. So much so that I am foregoing my play so you can talk about Geekway. You did ask me off air, is that because I don't have plays or what? And I said, well, it's mostly due to just conserving time. But what I will say is, remember I talked about Chewy being pretty sick the other week? Oh, it got worse. She had gotten better, and then it got worse. We got lab results back, and she had all of these various levels that were just like out of control. Signs of an infection, but not bacterial, it was viral. We wound up taking her to the emergency room on a Saturday night. We were there for almost 8 hours. They put her on an IV drip.
Oh.
Yeah. So it got serious. She's great now. She's fine now. So it's been, and she missed a ton of school, but like we were having to like work really hard to keep her fever down. So it was crazy. But anyway.
Glad she's okay now.
Yeah, she's good now. She's good now. Yeah, but they couldn't give her antibiotics because it's viral, not bacterial. But anyway, she's good now. So, Alex, you just attended Geekway of the West? To the West.
To the West.
To the West.
I think
so. Tell us about that, Alex.
I will. And I have it broken down into 2 parts on here, but I think I'm just going to talk straight through about both of them and try and be as brief as I can. But, I mean, conventions are a great place to get new plays in. And, Sean, I did this half speed, so to speak. For perspective, I live in St. Louis City proper, and although Geekway is in the St. Louis area, it's in a city actually called St. Charles, which is across not the Mississippi River, but a different river, I think the Missouri River. It's across that way, and it's about a half-hour drive from home. And so if you don't have a hotel room and you're not just kind of staying out there, you kind of have to pick and choose your battles. So I would say I spent some of the convention runs Thursday through Sunday. I spent some of Friday and some of Sunday there. So I got plenty of new plays in, but this was not the typical 25 new plays kind of all-in convention experience for me. To give you a sense of perspective, this is about the size of, say, a BGG con. It's a smaller con. It's not the size of an Origins or a Gen Con, but they're best known for their play and win section. They'll get about 6 copies of a game from a publisher. You can check it out, register the play, and then at the end of the convention, you have to be present to win. They will draw to see who got each of the various games. And you can register when you say, like, maybe you hated a game. You don't have to register to win that one because you can only win one game. So nice, small convention. Sean, I'll say something interesting because we've heard this kind of constant back and forth about what level of COVID precautions should you have, should you not have. They were checking vaccine status at this convention as a compromise, and it felt sort of like the old days of, a smoking section and a non-smoking section.
Yeah.
That's absolutely what it felt like because there was most of the convention space, the common areas, the vendor hall, and I'd say about 60% of the open gaming space were masks required spaces. And then there was a separate room, maybe call it 40% of the open gaming space or thereabouts, that was masks optional. So you could wear a mask in there if you wanted to, but you didn't have to. And it was just interesting seeing that dynamic and folks walking out of one room and forgetting they didn't have a mask on, then scrambling to put one back on. And it was an interesting compromise. And it seemed to work by and large, but it was this very weird thing that I've never seen at a convention before.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. Anyway, so let's talk about plays. First new play I got in of the con, I will say off the bat, of the kind of new release games, this one was my favorite. This is a game called Long Shot the Dice Game. Sean, have you heard of Long Shot the Dice Game?
I have not, Alex.
This is getting some buzz, I think partly because of a recent Shut Up and Sit Down review. This is a roll and write-ish horse racing game where you have a track with horses. They have to complete a lap. Your objective is to have the most money. You're on your turn, you're going to roll a die, and that die is going to move one of 8 horses. It's an 8-sided die, and then a 6-sided die, and it's going to move it anywhere from 1 to 3 spaces. In addition to that, that horse will have other horses with boxes ticked on it that will pull those other horses with it. So, as an example, Sean, if you rolled 7 and then moved that one 3 spaces, and 1 and 2 are marked, 1 and 2 would each move 1 space behind up the track. On your turn, you can then take one action. So the dice roll, the horses move, and then you take this, one of these actions, which could be get a helmet, which allows you to bet on horses after a certain point. Place a bet. Buy a horse. Unlocks a special ability, and if your horse does well by the end of the race, congrats, you get a large chunk of payout for this. So your score is basically payout from where horses finish in the race, combined with how bets have paid off, and some other small scoring. That's Long Shot the Dice game in a nutshell. I would say this, to me, doesn't replace something like Winner's Circle. Sean, have you played I don't know if you played Winner's Circles with me at any point.
No, I haven't. You played it with Raquel at, I want to say, BGG.
Okay.
And I watched like the last half of it. It looked fun.
My favorite game of that kind of genre, just because it has horse betrayal. There's like a social deduction element to how you play that game, which is quite fun. This is not that game. This is all out in the open with some amount of randomness, but a decent amount of strategy and skill. And so really enjoyable. I heard a lot of buzz about this one at the con. So Long Shot the Dice game. Check that one out if you get a chance. All right, Sean. Next up, Origins First Builders. Again, I'll ask, is this one this is one I worry about. Is this one you've talked about on the show?
No, but I've seen it. And I've wanted to try it if it's the one I'm thinking of. I'm looking all these up as you're talking.
So what's interesting about this one is it's the same designer as Nemesis and Lords of Hellas. And it feels absolutely nothing, certainly like Nemesis. I haven't played Lords of Hellas. But this is very much a Euro's Euro in a way. You have dice worker placement. And I would say the closest cousin to this game, in my mind, is Coimbra. It's one of those where the color of the dice matters, the value matters. And you sort of have some of those decisions in one, but you're not really drafting them. It's more you're taking actions with them, and those actions can be acquiring new tiles, building out your city, possibly closing districts, getting access to stuff, moving up a battle track. There's a lot of different things going on. There's these cool little spin dials that track, say, in order to take this action, your dice has to be of at least value 3, and then that ticks up when someone plays there to 4, and ticks up to 5 and 6 and so on, and then it resets to 1. A little overly long for my tastes would be sort of my broad, big picture thoughts on Origins First Builders. Not a bad game by any means. Maybe you'll like it, Sean, but it just felt long for what it was to me. So,
okay,
yeah. I'll mention, Sean, in the vendor hall, I bought some stuff, ran into some Dukes listeners, awesome, and also ran into the gentleman from Grand Gamers Guild who was mid demo and was like, "Wait a minute. Are you Alex from the Duke?" I was like, "Yes, I am." And he's like, "I used to listen to your show a lot." I was like, "Oh, excellent. Wonderful." No, one of those, he mentioned he just kind of did a lot of podcast calling during the pandemic. And I said, I get it. I don't have a commute anymore, so I don't listen to as many podcasts either. Not offended. Did buy a game from him. Bought a game called Garinto. I don't know if you've played that one or not, but a very cool abstract game.
No, but you missed an opportunity, Alex, to be like, "Oh, yeah, you're the guy from Grand Gamers Guild. I used to play games by you."
Oh, man.
Just kidding.
But that wasn't true because I actually hadn't ever played any of their games before.
You hadn't?
No, I think they're well known for Endangered, and then Garinto. I think those are the two of the big ones. There might be others, but in any case, we had a good chat. It was cool meeting him and catching up with other folks who listen to the show. All right, next up, Sean. This was up there with Long Shot the Dice game for favorite of the show, but I would probably give the nod just slightly to Long Shot. A game called Decorum from Floodgate Games. Sean, this is described as the passive-aggressive roommates game. This is a cooperative game where you're trying to decorate an apartment, and you all have secret goals and preferences. So you're trying to say, for instance, my secret objective might be, I want to have more modern items in this house than any other item. Or my goal might say, every room in this house has to have exactly 2 colors, no more, no less, right? Those are the secret requirements, but everyone has 3 or 4 of those requirements. And so on your turn, you're going to do something very simple. You're going to either remove a piece of furniture or attribute from the house, you're going to add a piece of furniture or attribute to the house, or you're going to swap out something for the same, for a different color of that same thing. So, for instance, the red wall hanging now becomes a blue wall hanging. That's by and large what it is. You have these scenarios. They're not really replayable, because if you know what someone else's goals are or what the broad goals are, can't do that one again. But there's a ton of different scenarios in there. At certain points in the game, you'll get an opportunity to share information. You'll get an opportunity to say, hey, here's one of my goals, so you know a little bit about what I'm going for. There is a solution to the puzzle, right, because they've pre-done the scenarios. There's not some case where the deck's going to get shuffled in such a way where you can't complete this. But it's hard. We had a lot of battling back and forth over different items, because after someone makes a move, you can make a comment like, oh, I don't know if I care for that, or, oh, yeah, good by me. And so one of those where you get into the theme of it pretty well. A cool puzzly game, really stylish, looks great. So Decorum, check that one out. All right, second to last, Sean, Seven Wonders Architects. Have you ever been playing Seven Wonders and said, this should be a lot shorter?
Nope.
Neither have I. This is a dramatically overproduced, dirt simple implementation of Seven Wonders. It reminds me of Monopoly Deal versus Monopoly, which I don't know. There's a good chance that no one else listening to this podcast has played Monopoly Deal, but it's a very streamlined kind of version of Monopoly. How it works basically in Seven Wonders Architects is, and I gotta say, Sean, an absolutely stunning production of this game. You have beautifully custom trays that have the abilities on the top. You have different shapes of buildings that all live in there. The decks are unique. It is a gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous looking game. On my turn, my draft consists of, there's a deck of cards that I share with my neighbor to the left. There's a deck of cards I share with my neighbor to the right. I pick the top card, because they're face up, of one of those decks, and then place it in front of me. I can also draw a blind off of the deck. If you draw resources, that's what's used to build your wonder in front of you. The wonders may have triggering one-time abilities. In fact, they're unique. That will also get you points. If you want to go the science route, if you get 2 of the same or 3 different, then you can get access to a science token. Fancy you. If you play war in front of you, and enough of these sort of war points are triggered from cards being played, you'll compare against your neighbors and get points accordingly. And then there's some of these that get you just straight points, the blue buildings. Some of those get you a cat. The cat's worth 2 points if you have it at the end of the game, but also it allows you to, when you have the cat, to peek at whatever the top card of the deck is. It plays in 10 to 15 minutes. It's very, very fast. Again, gorgeously produced, looks great. Incredible gateway game. I mean, a dream of a gateway game. But that's only if you don't consider, say, Seven Wonders a gateway game.
Sure.
So, less complicated than Seven Wonders by a good amount. Very good entry point, beautifully produced. Don't know how strongly I'd recommend it. And the last one I'll talk about, Sean, is one you're very familiar with, and one I had not played yet. It is, I think, broadly considered a masterpiece, A Feast for Odin. Meh? What am I thinking of? What's the other one? Maybe is that a 2-player one of his that's really well loved?
Fields of Art. Feast for Odin is really good. I reviewed it with, I think it was Aaron, or maybe it was it both Aaron and Quentin from Boards Alive? Or it was at least Aaron. At least Aaron was there. Oh, was that the super long edit? Was that the 19-hour edit? That might have been. Anyway, it's good, but I like some other Uwe games do things that it does better.
Top 25 all-time game.
For you or oh, okay. I'm like,
for
really?
me?
For you?
Well, maybe not far off. This is a kind of a blend of a polyomino style game mixed with his sort of caverna style 20 million action spaces that you can possibly play on worker placement. You are trying to go out as Vikings and set traps for skunk pelts and go conquer new islands, perhaps emigrate citizens, build new boats, all sorts of different things you can do in this game. There's an overwhelming amount of worker placement spaces in categories 1, 2, 3, or 4. Basically, I need 3 workers to play here, 2 workers to play here, 1 worker to play here, and those come with bonus actions alongside. I thought the game was fantastic. I did not win, didn't come that close. We played this one 2-player, but man, oh man, does this do a lot of cool things, and it was reminiscent to me of the sort of Uves of old I've enjoyed. This is a complicated Uve in the best way. I did not like, what is the game I'm thinking of? Harbor game.
Oh, Le Havre?
Le Havre.
Which is my favorite, my absolute favorite Uve.
Yeah, I don't
Le
care
Havre.
for Le Havre as much. But A Feast for Odin I liked a good amount. So if you liked Patchwork and you liked Caverna, this is the grown-up version of that. Probably pretty familiar to most folks. This has been out since 2016. A weight rating of a beefy 3.85 on BGG.
Yeah.
A little notch higher than a game we're about to talk to in our review section. But grateful to have this one taught to me by local friend Colin. And it was awesome meeting folks. I realized, Sean, I had not been to a convention. The last time I was at one was pre-pandemic, also known as when I was still working in the industry.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, long time ago. So it was a little weird. I definitely got a couple of, do you still work for Gray Fox questions? And the answer was, no. So anyway, thanks to the multiple Scots who listened to the show, who I ran into and met. Played some games with Susanna, another great friend locally. Jamie, played with a bunch of people. It was great. I've talked for way too long. That's my Geek Way to the West experience. I think you should come out for this con at some point. I think you'd dig it.
Cool. Yeah, I would very much like to come out sometime. Too bad I came out to St. Louis a couple weeks too early.
Yeah, although I will say it's because of the distance between there and the city. They're sort of mutually exclusive things in a way, because you could drive into the city and do some of the cool things out there, but it's a hike. It's no small feat.
Sure.
And it's just kind of natural, much like, at Dice Tower Con or some of those other ones we've been to in the past, to just kind of stay at the property. Unless you're like Sean and decided to take a Disney vacation at the same time and completely wear yourself out.
Nope, never do that again.
Yep.
Well, cool.
All right, that's me talking a ton about Geekway. Sean, other than Sean Con, when's your next convention?
Very likely BGG Con, but it will very likely be a very heavy 18xx experience.
Oh, man.
Yeah, like almost all 18xx the entire time is the plan. It's going to depend if Raquel comes out or not. If Raquel comes out, then probably not. But if Raquel doesn't come out, then it's going to be all 18xx all day.
Well, fair enough. Coming up after the break, Sean and I dive into the hot game of the year, of the moment. We'll see you there.
Well, you know what, Alex? Bleep it. Let's do it live. We're going to do it live. We're going to do the ad live, Alex.
Oh, I was thinking about this suggestion. Yeah.
Can you lay down some ad music for me?
No, you're the one doing the edit.
Just give me like a little, just make up a little tune. Give me a tune. And a little bit lower. No, we got to get the levels right. So I bring down the levels on the music way down. But now first I need you to like fade in the music. So we're going to go silent, and then I want you to fade in, and then I'll start talking. Go ahead. Well, Alex, the Dukes of Dice is very proud to be sponsored by our good buddy Berkey and Game Toppers. And right now, if you are listening to this podcast on the day it drops or the day after, maybe the day after, there is still time to check out Kickstarter. Yes, Kickstarter. Game Toppers 3.5. Just a few days left to go. Right now, Alex, it's just shy of $200,000. And I got to tell you, there's some really cool stuff here and some really good deals. You're getting some serious breaks on MSRP, but they've also got new leg kits for the Mycroft, removable leg kits for the Mycroft. So definitely check it out. We talked about last episode how they've got all new playmats by Vincent Dutray. You know, I actually spent some time this morning playing, I think it's a Mycroft, maybe it's a Holmes, I can't remember which one it is, but I played Ark Nova, our review game, this morning, Friday morning, took time off work and had a great play experience. Ark Nova, Alex, you can attest is a table hog, can't you? Alex, you can attest that it's a game hog. Table hog.
Yes, I sure can. I can attest that it's a table hog.
And we had plenty of room. We had plenty of room for the giant board. We had plenty of room for our zoo mats and our giant card tableaus. So I'm a big fan of Game Toppers. Obviously, they're a sponsor, but hey, definitely go check this out. Get your new elevated. Wait, what are you doing? Are you doing a specific song?
No.
The Charlie Brown Peanut song? Okay.
No, absolutely not. Would not do that.
Hurry, go check this out before it ends. And hey, if you're listening to this after it ended, I mean, I don't know. There might be some late backer thing going on, but probably not, because he would never do that. You got to get in on these deals right now. Right now, Alex. So go check out Kickstarter. You can also go to GameToppersLLC.com for some more information and a link to the Kickstarter as well. If it's not a showstopper, it's not a game topper.
Yeah.
Well, Alex, we don't have time to go into an Ark Nova like teaser intro like you normally do.
Oh no,
unless you've got one like ready to go. Do you have one?
Welcome to not Jurassic Park. That's about all I got. It was workshopping it, but no, yeah, just do your thing, because you got a long way to go on this rules explanation.
Well, yeah,
now I'm gonna take a break. I'm gonna rest my vocal cords from that Geekway recap. So
yeah, so let's talk about Nova's Ark. It's designed by Ifix E. Santev with art by Daniel Dean. Also Ifix Y Santev. It's a 2011 game. And Nova was a sentient alien scientist, and he made a startling grave discovery. The galaxy he had called home was also home to an imminent supernova, about to wipe out life as they knew it. Many of the animals in the galaxy were not sentient. They would have no way of surviving on their own. So he established a team for the preservation of alien life. Jumping from planet to planet in a race against a star about to explode, they sought to gather these aliens into a space vehicle that could carry them all to safety. They called it Nova's Ark. So let's talk about Nova's Ark. What's wrong, Alex?
Well, you know, I dug the fan fiction at the very least.
No, there's a game called Nova's Ark from 2011.
Sure. Definitely not what we're talking about.
Well, that's what I played. I played several games.
I don't think you
of
did.
Nova's Ark. No, we're talking about Ark Nova. I'm like, when are you going to interrupt me? Are you going to interrupt me anytime soon here? I'm reading
I wanted to see how it ended. I want to see how the story went.
Okay. Ark Nova. This is designed by Matthias Wiggy, with art by Loic Billiot, Dennis Lohausen, Stephen Beaker, and Christoph Tisch. So sorry. At least here in the US, it is published by Capstone Games. In Ark Nova, you will plan and design a modern, scientifically managed zoo. With the ultimate goal of owning the most successful zoological establishment, you will build enclosures, accommodate animals, and support conservation projects all over the world. Specialists and unique buildings will help you in achieving this goal. So there's a little brief overview. Alex, I'm going to streamline this rules explanation, because there's a lot going on. All right. So here's the deal. You have your own zoo board, and you're going to be putting, it's a bunch of hexes. You're going to be putting these different types of enclosures on it while you're sort of navigating around water and rock features. And ultimately, you're going to be putting animals in your zoo, but sometimes you're not just going to be putting them in, you're going to be letting those animals out, because there are two competing interests that you have here. You want to increase your appeal as a zoo, as an attraction, revenue, ticket sales, etc. But you also want to be known as a noted philanthropic conservationist. And that's really the key here, because the game is going to end when your appeal and your conservation level intersects. Basically, there are two tracks. And as you put more animals in your zoo, your appeal is going to go up. As you do more conservationist things, your conservation is going to go up. And then eventually they're going to meet. That's going to trigger the end game. And then whoever has gotten the bigger positive difference between conservation and appeal is going to be the winner. There's some end game scoring and whatnot. All right. So let's talk about the meat of this game, and that is action selection through these 5 different actions you have. You have the cards action, the build action, the animals action, the association action, and the sponsors action. And you could play whichever one of these actions that you want. You can keep repeating the same action over and over again if you want. But here's the thing. They are going to be below your zoo board, and your zoo board is going to have numbered slots 1 to 5. And so whatever action you take, it's going to be at a certain power level equal to that slot. 5 being more powerful, 1 being less powerful. And then when you use that action card, you're going to pull it out. It's going to slide to the one spot, and everything else is going to rush up to fill the spot that was just vacated by that. And so you're going to get better effects from these actions, the higher value that you're playing them at. So let's talk about them. All right. So the build action allows you to build standard or special enclosures, kiosks, and pavilions. So the enclosures are where you're going to put your animals, and they're different sizes. They go from size 1 to 5. And then there's also some special enclosures. There is a petting zoo. Eventually, when you improve your build card, you can then build an aviary, and you could build a reptile house. Those are both 5s. Is the aviary, is that a 6 or is that a 5? It doesn't matter.
I don't know offhand. I think it's yeah, okay.
No, doesn't matter. Don't need to get into the specifics here. They're bigger structures, and they're kind of interesting how they work. So you need to build these buildings, build these structures to be able to have the animals in them. And then also I mentioned pavilions and kiosks. Kiosks can help with income a little bit. Pavilions can kind of help with appeal. So that's the build action. Now let's talk about the animal action. This allows you to accommodate animals in your zoo. So all the animal cards, by the way, this is a huge card game. Kind of think Terraforming Mars in this huge deck of cards. There are 3 types of cards. There are animals, there are sponsors, and then there are the conservation cards, or I forget exactly what they're called, but that's fine. So the animal cards typically will have some sort of cost in money, and then they will also have a size requirement. So a particularly large animal, like an elephant, might have a size 5 requirement, meaning I need to have an available size 5 enclosure. And they may also have some prerequisites. So this game has icons, or for you Terraforming Mars players, tags. And the elephant might say, hey, before you can play this card, you need to have a certain tag out there, or your animal action card might need to be upgraded, for example. They may also say this particular animal needs to go into an enclosure that's adjacent to a water feature or adjacent to a rock feature. And then when you play it, it's going to give you some amount of tags. So there are the different descriptions of animals. So there are reptiles, there are predators, there are herbivores. I think there's like 6 or 7 different types. It might also give you a continent icon, and then possibly some other icons as well. And then usually it's going to give you some amount of appeal, and your appeal track is going to move up. And by the way, your appeal also increases your income during the sort of the upkeep round, which I'll talk about in a little bit here. And then there's usually some sort of special ability, usually an immediate special ability that will happen, that might let you draw some new cards, or it might let you rearrange your action cards in a certain way. Lots of different special abilities there. So those are the animals, the animal action. Now, the card action allows you to gain new cards. There is a sort of a row of cards that are in the middle of the board, and then there's also a deck of cards. So when you take a card action, you're going to draw a certain number of cards and possibly discard a certain number of cards, depending on the power of the action. You can draw blind from the top of the deck, or you could draw from the row of face-up available cards. But there's a third track a reputation track, and depending on how high on that reputation track will determine how many of those row cards that you have access to. But again, you can only probably take those if your card action has been upgraded. Okay, there's the sponsor action, which allows you to play a sponsor card in your zoo, or you can use it to raise money. So the raise money basically lets you lets you get money equal to the value of the action spot that it's in. Or you might have a sponsor card in your hand, or again, if it's an upgraded sponsor action card, you can pull from some of the cards in the row. Sponsors typically don't cost money, but they're gonna determine or be played by the level of the action card where it's at. And the sponsors might give you some sort of immediate effect. They may also have some sort of icon requirement. They will usually give you icons. And then very often there is either an income component to them and or an end game scoring component to them as well. All right. The last action is the association action. So there's another association board, and there are different levels of association actions. There's level 2, 3, 4, and 5. At level 2, it will let you increase your reputation. At level 3, you're going to form a partnership with some zoo on another continent, and there's these little tokens that are available. You put it on your zoo board, and that's going to make animal cards you play from that continent cheaper, and it's also going to count as one of those icons. The level 4 is a university counter, and the university counter again will go on your main board, and it's going to give you some amount of research tags, additional reputation, or it's going to increase your upkeep round hand size from 3 to 5. And then the last, second to last action, the 5 level action, is allowing you to claim one of the conservation cards. So there are these starter conservation cards, and then you may draw conservation cards from the deck. And there are certain requirements. So this one card might say, hey, if you have 2 American animals, the Americas animals, then you might qualify for it, but also 4 and then 5. And the higher levels that you meet, the more conservation points that you're going to get. Now, I did also mention there's another spot here in the association board, and that's the 0 spot. Once your association is upgraded, you can do this for free, but it does cost some amount of money, and it's an increasing amount of money, and it's going to get you more conservation points. Now, what I haven't mentioned is that as you're taking these university tiles, as you're taking these the association, the continent association things, you're going to be covering up these spots on your board. When you cover up these spots on your board, you're going to be getting certain bonuses, such as maybe, hey, go ahead and upgrade one of your action cards, or unlock these association workers, because you need association workers to take multiple association actions in one round before there's an upkeep, so to speak. Additionally, when you're claiming certain conservation cards, you're also taking things off your board that are giving you either some significant immediate bonus or some sort of ongoing income that happens. So basically, everything you do eventually is leading towards you getting these bonuses for moving along the tracks or placing certain things on your board. As you are building buildings and covering certain spots on your board, there's going to be other bonuses that are happening there. Ton of that going around. Now, I keep talking about these upkeep rounds, basically. So every now and then, when let's say a player takes a card action is going to increase the break track, which is a shared track, by 2. The number of spots on the break track depends on the number of players you have, but once it reaches the end, it's going to trigger this upkeep round, the break round, so to speak. The other thing that will increase the break track is when you do the money side of the sponsor action. For every level of sponsor that you have, it's going to move that break track up. If you break the break track, so to speak, you're going to get a bonus X, or maybe it's a plus, although it sure looks like an X, which is a token that lets you could spend it to increase the value of certain action cards as you play them. But what's cool about the break round, everyone's going to do this. You're going to all discard down to 3 or 5, depending on what your hand size is. You're going to pull back any association workers that you have so you can then redeploy them in the coming turns before the next break round. You're going to, there are these status tokens that you might get. If those are still around, then they'll go away at this point. You're also going to then get your income, which is going to be the money income is going to be a function of how high your appeal is up. Additionally, you're going to get some income for some of the different things that you've placed on your board, typically the kiosks. And then you might also have other income, like a particular sponsor card you've played lets you draw a card from the deck every round, or gives you one of those X icon or X tokens. So you're going to keep doing this. You're going to keep going around and around and around until, again, the two main tracks, appeal and conservation, meet. Everyone else but the player that made that meeting happen, is going to get one more round. You're then going to score some end game points based off the sponsor cards that you have in play. Also, everyone at the start of the game got these 2 end game scoring cards, which at a certain point in the game, they have to decide which one to keep, which one to get rid of. And at that point, whoever has basically had their 2 scoring pawns cross the most is going to be the winner of Arc Nova. That was mostly streamlined, Alex.
I think you did the best you could with a complicated game. An admittedly complicated game. It's just shy of a 4 on the weight rating on BGG, which ranges 1 to 5. So this is it's got some meat on them bones.
Yeah, it does. And what I will say is, it is, if you have played a great many of the games that this game has pulled from, while there are like weird little restrictions and weird little things, you're gonna be like, okay, I get this. Like I'm picking this up, and now it's just the corner cases of wait, what resolves first? How does this thing work? How does that work? But as far as just sort of the broad play of it, I think it's straightforward, but not in a vacuum. It's not straightforward in a vacuum in any way, shape, or form. It's complex.
I would agree with that. Yeah, it's in many ways, and we've seen this before with other games where it's a kind of a blend of mechanics. I'm trying to think of the one. There's a Euro one that I did not care for, that felt like sort of a love letter to Feld and other Euro games. Do you know the game I'm referring to? Was like Frankenstein?
But we coined the term Frankenfelds.
Yeah, this was a Frankenfeld. I feel like it had a horse or donkey card in it. Donkeys.
La Granja.
Yep, that's exactly. This is La Granja blending a bunch of other. It's like a love letter to each of these other games, but is its own thing somehow. So, Anyway, but we'll get into that in the review, Sean. Your first impressions of this game.
So I had heard about this game, and it's a Capstone game, so obviously I'm going to pay attention to that. You had played this months ago, and you were like, "Oh, Sean, you're going to love this game. Oh, this is a Sean game, total Sean game." I'm like, "Oh, okay." And then in the last, I don't know, month, 6 weeks or so, ton of buzz, ton of buzz. I mean, right now it's like what, top 15 or so on BGG.
As of this, I feel like I need to say as of the time of this recording, because it's moving up the charts awfully fast. It is number 14. It just passed Scythe, for perspective, on the BGG rankings. And by the way, we called this. If you listen to the year-end episode when we were talking about recapping 2021, this was a game we identified as, this game will be in the top 100, and it's doing way better than that. This game's on trajectory for top 10, top 5 pace. It is getting that much hype.
Yeah. And then Rory played it, and Rory's like, "Oh man, you're going to love this game. I'm going to set aside a copy for you. You're going to want to own this." And I'm like, "Rory, you say that about every game, number one." He's like, No, this one I really mean it. And I'm like, "Okay, Rory, like, but just be careful. Like, I don't need a bunch of buzz, a bunch of hype. Like, let me just play it. Let me just figure it out on my own." And just, he's like, "Yeah, you're right. Let's, it's good, but I don't want to overhype it." I'm like, okay. So yeah, I mean, I had really high expectations for this game going in. What about you?
Yeah, well, I didn't have the benefit of you telling me you liked it a lot. So I had heard some of the minor buzz about this, and thematically found it, oh, hey, it's a game about building a zoo. that sounds pretty cool. It's got some heftiness to it. I'd heard maybe some vague comparisons to Terraforming Mars, a game I did enjoy quite a bit. And I said, yeah, sounds really interesting. I'd be excited to play it. It's top of my list to try. And then I tried it, and I had the reaction you're about to hear about in this review.
Oh, all right.
Oh.
Well, let's talk about rulebook. Did you learn the game from the rules, or was it taught to you?
It was taught to me, and then very recently retaught to me, as in earlier this week when I got a fresh play of it in ahead of this review. I already knew the rules, but it was just there was a new player in the game. So I've had it taught to me twice.
Yeah, I had it taught to me. I played this on the first game was a Dukes of Dice Wednesday night. Played it 4-player. In fact, all my plays were at 4-player, which is interesting. Had it taught to me, but again, it was one of those things where, so Trevor was teaching it to a bunch of experienced gamers, and he taught it to us very quickly, and sort of glossed over, and I don't mean glossed over in a negative way, but just glossed over some of the details. Like, we'll figure it out sort of as it comes up, but like and we got it, and it was fine. And then I'm trying to think. I've spent some time in the rule book because there are some finer points. There are some things about, like, for example, when you play an animal card, how does everything trigger, and in what order? Is there an order? Well, it's actually up to you. So in terms of when you get when you get appeal, when you trigger a certain action, because there are things that might say, do this to all the players that are ahead of you on the track, but if you apply the appeal first, then they might not be ahead of you. You get to choose how that resolves, the order that resolves. Although there are some types of actions that say, when you finish this action, do this. That you don't have control over. That you have to do it like it says there. But there's a lot going on with the rule book, and I think it does a really good job. There's also a glossary that goes over some specifics of some of the cards. And then there's a sort of an icon sheet, double-sided icon sheet that helps. There was something I noticed, and I looked this up. So there's one card that says, whenever you play a water icon into your tableau, you get X or Y, whatever. And so I'm like, okay, well, now I'm playing something that actually has 2 water icons on it. The card doesn't say you get something for each of them. It says whenever you play a card that has a water icon on it. And I'm like, well, I know how that would work in Magic. In Magic, I would just get the benefit once because the card has multiple icons, but I'm just playing the card once. I went to the glossary and it said, no, for each. So it's good that it's there, but I think that's something that could have been written on the card.
So, Sean, I will mention this because this came up on Wednesday. There are other cards with a similar effect that spell out for each.
Yeah.
So I have a feeling it's more of a typo than an oversight, if that makes sense.
A failure to properly template.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that's what's at play here. And to be clear, we had a similar situation with there's one of the cards says you immediately score this number of points for every connected empty border space. I can't remember the card, but it was an odd one and one that we didn't quite know how to score. Do you score for just the largest connected border spaces set, or do you score for all of the ones that happen to be next to each other in clumps? I don't know. It wasn't 100% clear. So there were some little things like that were, yeah, I'm not quite sure how this resolves. Sean, I'll mention this in terms of rulebook parsing. This happened at Abby and I grabbed breakfast today at a place called Chris's Pancake House, and on the menu, if you order an omelet, it comes with, and I'm going to read it as phrased without emphasis anywhere, with hash browns and toast or pancakes. What does this, so what's the reality of that situation, Sean? Is this you either get hash browns and toast or pancakes, or is it do you get hash browns and toast or pancakes?
Mm-hmm.
Which one is it? No commas, read as it's written.
Is this an ode to the Oxford comma, Alex?
There is no Oxford comma provided, and I don't think
Okay.
one would make sense.
Well, I'm
but
saying it's whatever. Yeah. Okay.
it's not a list because it's two different clauses. It's this and
Oh,
this
yeah.
or this.
Were there any
So-
parentheses?
No. Nope. As written. So in your mind, hash browns, ampersand and sign.
I just feel like common sense would say you're getting the hash browns no matter what. Hash browns are coming. It's the question of which bread do you get?
You interpreted this the way Abby did. I interpreted it as, hey, hash browns and toast, or if you want pancakes, that's a whole other thing. And you were correct. It is the generous version of that option.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
Great.
it was just one of those things that I just could imagine gamers sitting at breakfast debating this just because of how it was written. It was sort of this weird little not well written menu that reminded me of some rule books. Not this rule book, but just some rule books.
Have you read the book
Anyway.
Have you read the book Eats, Shoots, and Leaves?
I have heard of this expression.
Okay. Well, we're not going
Because
to
it was a Millennium Blades card, wasn't it?
Was it?
Yeah, eats. Oh no, not Millennium. Oh man, I'm way off on games. King of Tokyo. This is a King of Tokyo ability card.
Oh, yeah.
On one of the panda character. It's eats, shoots, and leaves.
Right. It's yeah, if you put eats, comma, shoots and leaves, it's a story about a panda walking into a bar, shooting the bartender, and then leaving the bar. But if you're describing what a panda eats, and there's no comma after eats, it's eats, shoots, and leaves. Bamboo, shoots, and leaves.
Yes.
And there's a whole book. I feel like I read it in the early 2000s.
I like how we already knew this was going to be a long episode, and yet that didn't stop me
Nope.
from going off onto a menu writing tangent that, to be clear, not applicable to this game. Generally, pretty understandable and well written.
Sure.
So I think this game has very good iconography that helps you understand the game. I think there was some confusion. So they have for some of the animals, you have to have an alliance with a specific type of zoo. Like I have to have an alliance with a North American zoo or the Americas zoo.
The Americas.
Right. Or I have to have an alliance with the Australia Zoo, or I have to have an alliance with the African Zoo in order to, have the cred and quals to have this animal. In one player's case who was learning the game, and I think this was a reasonable question. Okay, it has a handshake. I have an agreement with a zoo.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily clear it's that zoo. So
Yes. So yeah, it's a generic. So basically all of the continent association tokens are different colors to match the continent. But on the card, it will show you this is a prerequisite, but it's a gray version. And I agree. I think we're kind of straying into art and components. I would agree that would seem to indicate that it's just you need any association. You don't need the matching association, but you do because it's in the rule book. Yeah, it needs to be matching. Although I think there was one where it doesn't. I think in the case of sponsors or something, because I wound up looking that up today. So yeah, I was like, that's a little weird. I feel like that should have just been the colored. Yeah.
Well, but the problem with that is some of them have just the prerequisite of have Africa symbols.
Right, but what I'm saying is instead of just having the
handshake
circle
with the
Africa,
color.
the handshake of the right color. Right.
Yeah, could be. But yeah, again, little stuff like that. I'm trying to talk more thematically about how easy is this game to learn and understand, and I think broadly the language of the game, if you are a gamer, I think is well written and easy to get into your brain relatively quickly.
Agreed.
There's some weird corner cases that you all have already described in part that sometimes get in the way of that, but neither here nor there. Art and components. Sean, did this game impress you? Did it wow you with its production?
Oh yeah, no, I mean it looks good. There's nice big board. Well, maybe not nice. It's a big board. It takes up a lot of space. Like if you don't have a dedicated gaming table, you may be struggling to play this. But overall, I think the component quality is excellent. I mean, really excellent. solid tokens, cardboard shits, things like that. You I mean, there's some, people are going to come out with little inserts or insets for some of the tokens and things like that. Not a huge deal. It's not as bad as Terraforming Mars was, where if you bump it, you're gonna forget what your actual income is for the different types of resources. That's not really the case here, but it certainly would be a nice upgrade. My biggest gripe is the quote unquote art on the cards. I would say the vast majority of it are photographs, and some of them are just photographs, and then others are photographs that some sort of Photoshop filter has been applied to make it look like art or some sort of illustration, and it's still very clearly a photograph with a very lazy filter on it. And there's no rhyme or reason for when it will be filtered and when it won't be filtered. Like if it was like all the animals will be filtered, but all the sponsors will remain photos. And then I want to say the green conservation cards, those are actual illustrations or art, if I'm remembering correctly.
I don't know, but I do know it's odd because this game is already getting compared to Terraforming Mars. It felt a lot like Terraforming Mars in that way. Just the weird, some card art looks really cool. Some of it's just a picture of something. Some of it's a little bit of a mess on that front. I don't disagree with you there.
Yeah, it was almost like they said, oh, there's all of these complaints about Terraforming Mars about the jarring differences between the art styles. So let's just do all photographs and then we'll filter it. Because that's what I thought at first. Because I'm like, oh, cool, I see what they did. Okay, that's fine. But then I started noticing the inconsistencies. I was like, well, that's weird. And it was a little jarring. It's not going to affect the final score. It's not terrible. It's not the worst thing in the world, but it was noticeable and kind of I would have thought you would have learned from Terraforming Mars, but and again, I feel like they did, but then they just didn't take it far enough. Or their graphic design person was like, oh my God, I've applied 98 filters and I have 140 left to go. Okay, forget it. Don't worry about it. We'll go as it is. Who knows?
Sean, I don't know the number, but I do have a memory from pretty early on in my time at Gray Fox of working on the game Bushido.
Mm-hmm.
And Bushido is one where, if you look closely, for the few people out there who have a copy of this game, there are 3 artists credited on BGG. I know of at least 4 or 5 that at various points had art that was worked on or possibly used or whatever else. Like, it was one of those where it was just hard to get. Like, some of the artists, 20% of the cards looked really great and the other 80% were bad, and some of them 60% looked good but the other 40% were kind of iffy, and it was just sort of mixing and matching and trying to sort that out. And I'm imagining that was a game with far fewer cards than this one. This one has an astronomical number of cards in the game, and not a fun exercise as a publisher.
Sure.
So I kind of get it in one sense, and it's not so out of place because you are talking about zoo animals. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's the game's strong suit. I wouldn't say that's where it shines.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will say the area where you lay out the various zoo exhibits and the pavilions and things along those lines, the water and the rocks and all of that, pretty easy to understand. Pretty easy to understand what kind of bonuses you'd get from building over that space. Stylish. I think it looked generally pretty good. It gave you a good sense of what bonuses you get when. There's a place for everything. Everything on the board has a place. It's efficient as far as that goes. Would I have liked a multi-layered board for my player board? Absolutely. Is it as nearly as big of a problem as it was in Terraforming Mars? As you said, Sean, not close.
Yeah.
Because I can have $40 or whatever else, and whether that gets bumped or not really doesn't matter. And if an exhibit gets bumped, I guess there's a chance I might not know where it went, but not super likely to happen. There's just not anything on here that you can't easily fix. So a non-factor, but a cool thing to upgrade, especially if you end up loving this game, which I think a lot of people obviously have. So, you need a game to be so popular that it'll have a secondary market of upgrades. This game is absolutely that level of popular. It'll be easy to find. I don't know about cheap, but it'll be easy to find if that's something you want to do. By and large, by itself, I think looks just fine. Nothing blows me away special about the look of this game on the table, though, and we'll talk about thematics more than maybe usual. It does bring you into this sort of zoo architect kind of feel.
Okay, cool. Well, I guess that's it for the review. Let's go to final thoughts.
Yeah, okay. Where do we start with this, Sean?
I don't know. I don't know. There's just so much. There's so much to unpack here in terms of gameplay that it's overwhelming. And in fact, it's interesting. This is quite possibly, if you look at the guild comments, this is quite possibly one of the most commented on games that we've talked about in recent memory.
And most divisive.
Yes.
In the comments.
Surprisingly divisive given the very, very warm reception that and the hype and everything this game has seemed to have received. So yeah, there is.
I have a starting place.
Go nuts.
I think, and from what I've seen in some of the comments, it's not unique. I had not played the game that this mechanic was brought in from, but that action selection mechanic with the cards, chef's kiss. Oh, I love it. I love it so much. This idea of, do I take this action now, knowing it's not as powerful, not as efficient, maybe I'll feel like I only did kind of half a turn, or do I let it build up and maybe I don't have the chance to do the thing I wanted to do? Or the break happens before I have a chance to upgrade my income, or this card that I was trying to snap up, I can't do it. That's a crunchy decision in this game. Which card do I use when? That's huge. When I upgrade a card, which of these 5 cards do I upgrade? And I don't know, Sean. Maybe there's an optimal play. Maybe there's an optimal, this card you should always upgrade first. And I'm sure people will have strong opinions on this. I don't at this point. I don't have strong opinions. All of them are super useful in different ways. Sean, in my last game of this, I didn't upgrade my association card. And my zoo, as a result, ended up a polluting mess. I'll talk again about that more specifically in theme, but it locked me out of a lot of ability to get conservation. That was super important and ended up costing me the game. Well, do I do that? Do I do cards? And maybe do that early so I can see more cards earlier because it's a big deck and seeing more cards is great. Do I unlock the ability to build and build more efficiently early in the game? What's the best route to go? There might be an optimal play, but it feels like a super cool decision, and you can't do everything. You can only upgrade at most 4 of the 5 cards you have in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do? In what order? How do I, maybe I have this icon I really want for my zoo. Do I take the turn to go and grab it before you do, or don't I? I don't know. Do I hold on to this super powerful card, or do I wait until I maybe get a chance at some discounts and some other synergies? I had a really cool herbivore synergy in my most recent game of this, Sean, where anytime anyone played an animal with an herbivore icon, I got money.
Yeah.
Awesome. Anytime I played into my own zoo, I not only got money, I would get appeal, and not only would I get appeal, I'd also get the ability to slide a card from, say, space 4 that I don't want in that space all the way down to 1. That sort of clever action. Or I can remove a cube when I play an herbivore and play a sponsor card at a lower cost immediately. There's so many different little chain reactions you can trigger and little synergies you can find. I don't know. Again, and now I feel like I'm lost. I don't know where to go next because...
By the way, you've done air quotes to the camera like 3 times so far this episode.
Yeah.
Just so you know, that doesn't translate into the audio. But
no, they knew. Everyone knew.
Did you say what game that mechanic came from?
They said, I think Civilization
New Dawn. Yeah. And it's also something similar in the Conan, the Conan and the Batman miniatures games.
Okay.
There's something similar with the, no, I agree with you. I think it's great. And I think it's super tense. And, I spent like you were saying, I had a game today, a game this morning, where I had a bunch of carnivores in my hand, and I had the sponsor card that said whenever anybody plays a carnivore, get $3. And I'm like, oh, all right. Well, I want to play this sponsor out first before I play these carnivores. Great. Oh, but wow, I have this other sponsor card that's even better. So let me play that first. So now my sponsors were at say 4, and I play the sponsor card. It goes all the way back to 1. And now it's going to be a couple turns before I can play the carnivore sponsor card. I'm like, all right, that's fine. I'll wait. And then I take a look over at the break track and I realize, oh, we're really close to the break round. I haven't played an animal, or I've only played one animal to my zoo so far. Everyone else has played like 3 or 4. We're going to go into a round and I'm going to get minimal income. Do I play this now? I'm like, well, I'm only giving up $3. Like, what's the big deal? But still, it's like the tension of it, I think is really interesting. And again, like you said, with upgrading the cards, what's, I can make an argument for why you should upgrade just about any one of them, right? Why do you want to upgrade the build card? Well, when it's upgraded build, instead of building just one building, you could build any number of buildings that total up to that value. Plus, it unlocks the bird aviary and the reptile house, which are super cool because they're very efficient at storing birds and reptiles. You could put a reptile in its own little pen, but that takes up a lot of space, so to speak. Whereas you could put multiple reptiles in the reptile house. So that's a really good reason to do it. Why do you want to upgrade animals? Well, if you upgrade animals, you're going to get to play more animals for lower action points. Also, if you max out animals on 5, you're going to get to play out multiple animals and you're going to get a reputation bump. Well, that's really good too. I mean, I could say this about all of them, but like there's a strong reason to do all of them. And it's very, very heavily dependent on your particular strategy that game, what your end game scoring looks like, what the different conservation cards are out there that you might be working towards. It's a tough decision. And I do feel like there's a lot of planning that can be involved. My first game, I played this with regular Scott and Heather, and I was explaining, I'm like, oh yeah, this game is so difficult. I think I came in last place. I'm like, yeah, this game is so difficult because here I am trying to I want to sequence things in the right way, and then I also want to set up my build action to be at level 5 so I can do this. And then Scott, who won, was just like, oh, I just pretty much picked 5 every time. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess that worked for you this game. but yeah, I think it's incredible in terms of the difficulty there and the level of planning that you can do in this game. But just to have it all blow up in your face when someone triggers a break early, or they take a card from the row, or they place out one of their cubes and one of the conservation cards that you were ready to get next time. So there is a decent amount of interaction, but there is still a good amount of multiplayer solitaire. You really have no idea what everyone else is doing to a certain extent. I think the big exceptions are when you have cards that say when anybody plays this, so you have to share, hey, I just played a reptile, Rory, you're gonna get a bonus here. Sometimes you're tracking numbers of icons, but when it's because you're worried about racing towards a particular conservation card, but it's hard to see in a 4-player game across the other side of the table. I think the big thing is you're really just watching where are those 2 tracks. This player is getting really, really close. Oh boy, is this game going to be over sooner rather than later? And early on, you're like, oh my God, this game is never going to end. Look how far apart these tracks are. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, poof, game's over. So.
Yeah. It's also one of those games, everything is Splendor, Sean. I don't know if you've heard. It's been a while. But one of those where when I think of Splendor, I think of you can spend too much time overbuilding your engine.
Yeah.
And I overbuilt an engine in my most recent game of this for money. Mm-hmm. Money does not do anything for you at the end of the game, unless you have I guess there's maybe an end goal card that might do something. But for the most part, nothing. I'm not even sure if it's a tiebreaker or not. Sean, I ended this most recent game because it ended sooner than I was expecting. In fact, our game ended during a break because Jamie had conservation income, and that was enough to have them cross. Yeah. I ended with $90 extra left over.
Yeah.
That is not an efficient use of capital reserves, and a good indication that I spent way too much time building up the get more money engine and not nearly enough time on the get points that will actually win you the game engine.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that element of things. You mentioned the level of interaction. Sean, I don't know if you played with this house rule or not. I don't know if it's an official rule. I think it's a house rule. But there are some mean abilities, and the mean abilities can feel punishing. They're not game-breaking in most cases. One of them is like, for instance, the constriction effect, which says this card, moving right to left, or X number of cards, act as if they're 2 levels lower for one action that you play it on, and then it's gone. Yeah. And if a break happens, it's gone anyway. So it's not too bad, but we have played with the option of, for single-player games, instead of taking the punish other players action, there's no other players to punish, you can get, say, an X, or you can get some money, or get whatever else as a one-time bonus instead. Mm-hmm. And we've played where you can either have the punish other people effect, or you can have the solo effect.
Oh, all right.
Did you play with that?
No. I like my games mean, Alex.
That's fair. If you don't, though, and I'll say this, compared to, say, Terraforming Mars, where you can literally throw asteroids at each other, this game is not that mean. I mean, even with the mean actions on, it will be annoying, but I don't think it would derail anyone's game fundamentally.
Yeah, I mean, my very first game that I did terribly in, the game, let's see, it was right before the player that ended the game. This was Heather. So Scott ended the game, and then right before Scott ended the game, Heather played the constriction card, and I had a 5. My action, the 5 card, is what I was going to do, and it was just enough for me to put 2 animals in that I wouldn't have won by come anywhere close to winning, but I would have done a little bit better. And I was like, oh, I get 1 action left, and I can only do 1 of the animals, and being able to play both animals, they were going to be greater than the sum of their parts, so to speak. But I couldn't do that. That was a little frustrating, but it's fine. It's totally fine.
Sean, I almost filled up my zoo board.
Okay.
I came very close, but because the game end triggered a turn early, I wasn't able to do it and had to pivot to something else that would keep me from losing quite as badly. I finished 3rd out of 4 in that game. So
interesting.
Anyway. Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot, Sean, about interesting decisions being something we love. And I think the combination of, let's say you're even just, do I draw a card or do I take one of the cards in the river of cards available? Mm-hmm. Do I go to try and play a sponsor card from hand? Do I try and build towards this? Do I flip up this card so I can get access? Because some of the animal cards you can't even play unless you've upgraded the animals card and shown you're capable of taking care of a giant elephant as a zoo. Interesting decisions galore in this game for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I agree. And we'll hear this in at least one of the comments from the guild. But one of the things kind of along those lines is I love, when a game makes me feel like I'm doing something really clever. And I'm getting that in spades with this game. It is, it's really satisfying to have all these little things kind of chained together. You may have turns where it's like little incremental things are happening and you're like, oh, that's fine. And then you may have a turn that's like, okay, I'm going to do this, which can give me one of these, and which is going to lock this, and I can do this. And then I place this animal, which will then and it's crazy. It's really fun. It's really cool. But yeah, I mean, I felt like there were numerous opportunities throughout gameplay where the game is making me feel like I'm doing something clever.
Or you have a master plan and you're building to something clever.
Sure.
So I have to do this prerequisite before I can unleash this one specific part of my brilliant plan. I don't know. Sean, because of the sheer volume of guild comments, my proposal is let's talk theme and then let's talk guild comments and kind of give our responses to both the good and the bad that we saw in there. So theme, we talk a lot about theme in the context of, does this theme add something to the game? And my answer is an unequivocal absolutely with this game. It adds a ton. I've heard this game described as Zoo Tycoon, the game. You're trying to kind of manage the various resources of the zoo. But Sean, I absolutely told a story in this most recent play of my zoo. This is a zoo that 2/3 of the way through the game, my conservation icon had not budged, had not moved one bit. I had added a bunch of animals, had a lot of synergy, was getting some money going. My ticket sales were tied for the top or in first. So I was getting good attractiveness, but was not saving the earth in any way, shape, or form. And the one turn where I finally moved the marker, I said, all right, my zoo has officially decided to switch from plastic forks to recycled compostable forks. like the smallest of small gestures. And the game ended with that part of the track had just barely gotten past the player bonuses, even with some, I mean, I had 6 points of conservation movement on my 2 endgame scoring cards that I had. And that still barely moved the needle. I did not do a very good job of conserving or saving the earth, Sean. But
I suppose
I
not.
told a story in the process. And even, theme or not, when you have a card that says get paid every time an herbivore gets played, it became a running joke that anytime anyone played anything, if it was a bird, if it was a frickin' lion, I would jump in and say, herbivore? Herbivore?
I did the same thing. I was like, hey, is that bird a reptile? Any chance that bird's a reptile? No? Okay.
No,
Proceed.
all right, moving on. Yeah. So you do feel like you're building something and building something cool. You're building a space, and the space you could sort of envision having life. Like, okay, the polar bears are way over here in the corner, and then there's a pavilion next to that, and this, and is it completely evocative? Like, is there, and then an explosion happens at the zoo. What do you do? Or you caught some kids trespassing overnight. Like, it doesn't have those kind of story beats to it, but there is enough there for this kind of resource management style game where I dripping with theme and made better for it in my view.
I didn't care for the theme.
What?
No, I just didn't. When I play Terraforming Mars, I love the theme, and it reminds me of all of these soft and hard sci-fi books and TV shows and movies that I've consumed over the years. And I don't dislike animals, but I'm not like I was never a kid that was like screaming for zoo books. Hey mom, go get me zoo books. I really want zoo books. Wasn't my thing.
How dare you? How dare you, Sean?
It wasn't my
Zoo
thing.
Zoo books are a treasure. I strongly enjoy. St. Louis has an amazing zoo, and it's a free zoo. It's an amazing free zoo. They had a reservation system they introduced during COVID. They're taking that away. You can literally just walk up and walk in. It's an incredible spot. I also enjoyed the Albuquerque Biopark. So I don't know. I'm a zoo guy. I like zoos,
and that's cool. It's not my thing, but that didn't affect my thoughts or feelings for the game. Like, certainly there was a lot of things made sense to a certain extent, but it wasn't like a big wow factor for me.
Well, I mean, it's if you want to play an elephant, you have to have a big spot for the elephant.
Sure. Yeah.
You have to have a certain level of acumen with animals in general, and it's going to cost a lot of money, but it'll sell tickets. Oh man, will that thing sell tickets in a big way. And elephants live a long time, so you get some end-game scoring cards. I don't know. It feels like there's little touches where things are connected.
No, I agree. I agree with that.
Yeah,
I'm just saying the theme itself
for you, it didn't do anything.
Didn't resonate. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. I think the theme is well threaded throughout the game.
I agree.
And to me, made it a better experience.
Yeah, it's fine.
To me, it's a strong plus.
Okay.
All right.
I'll do this first one.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Great.
So BJ from Board Game Gumbo. I don't know why we say that. Can we just call him BJ? Like, he's our buddy BJ. All right.
No.
BJ.
Dr. Gumbo is acceptable.
Okay. Dr. Gumbo says, only one play so far for me. Great game. Too long. Enough said. Alex, you could read the rest of the guild thoughts. Just kidding.
Oh man.
There's a lot, and they're long.
Yeah, and we'll do our best. But yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if it's because I get absorbed in the decisions and the planning of this game and the arc of this game. No
Mhm.
pun intended. Um, it never felt long to me.
No, it did not. Even again, all of my plays were at 4 players. I think I would rather play this at 3. I think 3 is probably the sweet spot for this. And my games were long. I think 3 hours, 245, 245 about. And I never was like, "Oh my god, is this game gonna end?" Like, never.
With Teach, we played this in 2 hours, 45 minutes.
Okay, cool.
With Teach.
Yeah.
And some of what you can do to help that is if you know what your turn is and it's not going to be deterred by whatever else anyone plays, you can set aside the resources, set aside what you're going to do, and get that prepared and just
Sure.
do it when it's your turn and get it done with. And look, there are going to be times when you have a tough decision. A new card popped out. You're curious about the order of things. Maybe you just realized, oops, I don't meet all the requirements for this card. It'll lead to some moments of a little bit of AP, potentially. But I think this game can absolutely flow really well. I do think, though, because of the game end trigger, if you have folks who are inexperienced with it potentially, I could see a game taking a long time to end because there's nothing really pushing it towards a conclusion. You're
Right.
having a hard time getting the tracks to meet.
Sure.
So, anyway. All right, Steve Paltrineri says, after a couple of games, I'd say it's also pretty average. There's a lot of hype around this one. There's going to be someone like Tom Vassell who says it's his #1 game ever, but for me, it did not live up to the hype. The gameplay is good, but it's way too long. I don't mind long games, but this one adds to that with being way too random. The deck of cards is just too big, which makes it very difficult to develop any kind of strategy because you never know what cards are going to come out. Also, there doesn't seem to be multiple paths to victory. Sure, there are multiple ways to go about it, but everyone needs to work on appeal and conservation at the same time. When I started typing this, I was planning on giving it a 4, but I realized I really don't want to play this game again, but it's better than a 2, so I give it a 3. To be clear, we rate everything at the Dukes of Dice on a 6-point scale, so 4 would be pretty decent. 3 is, kind of mediocre. Better than 2 gives it a 3, and a giant shrug because I do not understand why this is so high on the BGG rankings. So, a couple things to respond to there. Sean, I would imagine of anyone, the randomness would bother you in this game.
Really? Okay.
More so than me.
No.
Yeah.
What?
Okay.
What are you
All right.
talking about?
Maybe not. Oh, I guess, yeah, Magic the Gathering. Okay.
I am all about digging for the cards that you need.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
but someone else is going to say this a little bit later too. But yeah, it's I have okay. In Magic terms, you're looking for enablers and you're looking for payoffs, right? So you set up a couple enablers, cards that will give you something if you get the payoff cards, right? And so I think you have to have a couple different irons in the fire, so to speak. But there is a very tactical nature that's like, well, I'm really looking for these research tags. I'm not seeing them. I'll keep an eye out for them on the river as they're coming down, and I'll do something that I'm not planning to do to get that card if I need it. But for the most part, I'm going to make do with what I've got, and I'm okay with that. I'm fine with that.
I'm fine with it too. And I'm fine with, there are going to be some issues where someone is going to happen to draw the one card they absolutely needed at the right time.
Yeah.
It can absolutely happen with a game like this. Doesn't bug me. Doesn't bug me in this because I'm too focused on what can I do next to best optimize my chances of building the best zoo. And it's possible because of that, sometimes the best player won't win. I'm okay with a little bit of that. I'm okay with a little bit of uncertainty in a game and a little bit of luck and a little bit of this game will benefit the better player, but it won't necessarily be dominated by it. It's possible you happen to draw the right 10 cards in the right order at the right time because it's a giant deck, and that's how it goes. I love the variability of a game like that. I love Terraforming Mars for that. I love this idea of if you get too fixated on one strategy and keep hunting for that one strategy and are not flexible enough, you can get punished. I like that in the game.
I agree.
But I also know there's a whole subset of gamers who do not care for it in any form. They don't like randomness. They prefer knowing things, not having things disrupt their strategy, having pure skill win the day. That's not my style of game necessarily. I'm okay with this amount of randomness in the game. And it's perfectly okay if you're not. But just
Yeah.
know it is a big deck, and you don't have complete control over things. I don't think it's too random, but I can understand folks who do. I will say this, though. I would dispute the...
We're never going to get through these guild thoughts.
No, it's going to be a while. Some of these will repeat, maybe. Multiple paths to victory. Yes, the objective of the game is to get conservation and appeal to cross, and you should probably work on both. No, I can't. No, Siri, I can't say that again. The objective of the game is to get those paths to cross and cross as much as possible. There are multiple ways to do that. You can do that by going heavy on appeal and donations and having excess money to burn into that. You can go heavy on building a bunch of big exhibits and big animals to fill them and having ticket synergies and sponsor synergies and all sorts of things. That, to me, is where the multiple paths to victory comes about. The order of the cards I flip, the different possible synergies and combos. That, to me, is multiple paths to victory, even though it's the same core objective. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So, Steve, I agree with you that there will be some folks who will find this too random. I disagree sharply on the multiple paths to victory not factoring in. So.
All right. And then Garrett Wehrman says, Arc Nova is not some kind of engine builder. It's a race game, and you really need to be able to adapt to what is in front of you. I've thoroughly enjoyed my few plays thus far, both at 2-player and solo, and am eager to get it back to the table. I really enjoyed the action selection mechanic and the mini puzzle of your zoo board. The rules are relatively simple, but the heaviness of the game comes from all of the stuff you need to juggle. I found it to play fairly quickly with a couple of 2-player games clocking in around 90 minutes. I'd rate it a 5.
Yeah, not much to add there. I think that idea of the puzzle of your zoo board is spot on. It does feel like a cool puzzle you're trying to sort out. And the management of different factors, different currencies, different things I'm trying to boost at different times, that can be a big mental load. So yeah, that can cause some AP for sure. Francois Miley says, yeah, it's a long one. Long story, the game with 3 players took us 3 hours without any AP players. The first part is a grind, and the end game is a plagued by so many restrictions that you don't do much more. That is way too long for what the game gives back. The cards, too much luck of the draw with too many restrictions. How you have a handful of animals costing 15 plus? Well, too bad for your early game. You draw a bunch of sponsors and cheap cards, you'll have a nice start and maybe an engine to go with it. Endgame gets even better. You didn't plan for 2 Australia, 1 science, $20, a 5-hex zoo tile with water near? Well, too bad, tough luck. The scoring, no player likes to end with negative 40. When you have to explain to a new player that they did 70 points and not minus something, where is the fun in that? There is some good there. The river of cards for your action, such a nice and elegant puzzle. The zoo building is fun. We all left the table unimpressed. Some of this stuff we've talked about before, Sean. Luck of the draw and timing and some of those fun things. The one thing I will say that I agree with is the scoring system in this game is hyper punishing.
Yeah.
You have to set the stage ahead of time. I did this with a new play of Patchwork, which I lost, but I did this with the play of Patchwork where I said, here's the thing with this game. You might end up with a negative score. It does not mean you failed. It just means you had a rough game. Like sometimes this game is 4 to negative 15, and sometimes this game is 20 to 11. Arc Nova is a game where it's possible only one player will end with a positive score, and that can be a feel-bad moment.
Yeah, definitely can be. All right, and then Sarah Reiber says, once we got our playtime of Arc Nova down to 1.5 hours from 4 days, well, not full-time, but that's how long it was on the table for, we enjoyed it even more. Despite the lack of animaples, which any self-respecting zoo game needs, we found nothing really mind-blowing in the gameplay, but it's just weirdly addictive with the little dopamine hits of chaining actions and being able to do something cool every turn. It's like eating really good French fries. French fries. Yes, it's not, I never know how to say this. Hot
cuisine.
Hot cuisine? I know how to say cuisine. But somehow, you can't stop.
Phil Hendrickson chimes in right off of that. I'm with you, Sarah. The game gives tons of micro combos and occasionally a really big turn that lets you feel quite clever. But all of the little decisions along the way keep it interesting. It definitely builds up as you go, giving a nice arc. No pun intended. It is a slow build at first, but ramps up after you upgrade a couple of action cards, By the way, I have seen Animeeple upgrades to use in place of the scoring pawns. It's an easy 5 for my wife and me. Once we get the playing time down a bit, it could be a 6. And that to me is the key of this, Sean. It's that chain reaction. I'm setting up this big turn, or I'm doing this thing that unlocks this thing, the interesting decisions at the core of this. That to me is the key to this. So I resonated a lot with Phil's comment and Sarah's comments.
And then Sylvain the Qua says, let's start with the elephant in the room. See what I did there? Arc Nova.
Pun intended. Pun was intended.
Arc Nova is one of the best games that was released in the last 5 years. I tend to play a lot of games, but this one really stands out. The game itself takes major elements from 3 games, the action selection from Civilization New Dawn, the scoring track of Rajas of the Ganges, and the tableau building feeling from Terraforming Mars. But the result is absolutely amazing. Yes, it might be a bit long, but my games ended up being around an hour, 45 minutes at 2 players, a bit more at 4 players. Yes, there's a lot of hype around this game, but it's that good. This game might become my number 1 of all time, surpassing Terraforming Mars that has been sitting on the throne for the last 4 years. And for the first time on the Duchy, a game gets a high 6. In fact, almost a 7. Oh boy.
Yeah. All right. More comments. Sean, I think this is a record for most Duchy thoughts. 2
more. Let's power through. Good thoughts, everyone. Good thoughts.
Adam Dalton, I have now played Arc Nova 8 times and am enjoying it more and more. Yes, it can be random, but you got to deal with the tactical nature of the game. The card combos are fun, the scoring is cool, and it just makes me feel clever. We all know that's important in the Duchy. The biggest complaint is length. At first, I limited my plays to a max of 3 players, and most of those games were clocking in around 3 hours, with the longest pushing 3.5 hours. This last Friday, I broke my own rule and played with our close gaming friends at 4 players and expected a 4-hour game, especially with it being their first time, but finished in 2 hours and 40 minutes. I can handle that for a 4-player game. That isn't too much longer than Terraforming Mars or Underwater Cities at that player count, which are the 2 games this gives me vibes of, just with less player interaction. On the ducal scale, a 6 for me. Sean, I'll make a couple of points off of this, just in terms of player count and length. It is possible to me, because of the need to build a cool puzzle and have things cross and build an efficient zoo, you could have smaller player counts, unintuitively perhaps, take longer. Take longer. And I sort of made that point earlier, but I think it's not unreasonable to think a 3-player game of this will actually be longer in some cases than a 4-player game.
Okay.
I think partly, too, because you can draft off of other people's actions. If I have that one herbivore card that says, I get money every time an herbivore is played, that doesn't scale for player count.
True.
It just happens whenever this comes about. Wingspan does something where, right, it only triggers once, but as long as someone does it, it triggers. It's not going to trigger multiple times, so it's sort of held back on scaling, but it's more likely to happen in a higher player count game. This doesn't have that balancing. Every icon that gets played, you get paid.
Right.
And so I don't know if that means more frequent breaks, relatively speaking, hence more income, hence something pushing the game towards a conclusion a little faster. That's possible. But I think it's absolutely reasonable to think 3 players might be the longest count. I don't know this from experience.
Yeah. No, I've only played 4 players. I tried to get a 3-player in, and then we added someone. But anyway, Ian Kissel says, I played Arc Nova once at 4 players, and to be honest, it bothered me how much it was just an amalgamation of other games. I love the card row mechanic, but it's just a straight ripoff of Civilization New Dawn, and I would prefer just to play that game. The whole Tetris puzzle for your zoo also felt extraneous, like every game has to have one of these days. At 4 players, I thought it went too long with too much downtime, and all of the cool elements are better in the games that it steals from, or I guess is inspired by. I might be willing to play a game with 2 or 3, but I am not really that motivated to try it. A ducal 3. Oof. Okay.
Well, we have arrived at the threshold, unless there's something else. Sean, did you find the puzzly nature of assembling your zoo that interesting in this game?
Yeah. No, it was really good. I also liked it when I didn't have that puzzle, because I got a card that said you can ignore the build requliments for rocks and water, and hey, you can also build on rocks and water. So but yeah, no, I did. I'll go first since I'm talking. So let me there are a lot of games that we review that I push myself to get plays in. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to play this. I don't want to play this again. Lizard Wizard, I don't want to play you again. And then there was this game. This game where I went out of my way to schedule a game on a Monday night, to take off time from work to play it this morning. I am all for playing this game again in the next couple days, the next week. I think this is going to hit the table quite a bit. I liked this game quite a bit. And it's interesting, there's some pretty widely divergent thoughts on the guild. Even in my play today with some of my core gaming group, Jeremy, Matt Walker, and Eugene, everyone was kind of like, yeah, it's good. It's fine. I mean, they weren't super crazy about it. I like this quite a bit. So as you mentioned before, it's a 6-point scale. This game is either going to be a 5 or a 6. A great game will rarely turn down a play of it. 6, an all-time favorite that's a contender for the top 10. And here's what I'm thinking to myself, right? Like, how often am I going to play this at home? Is this something that Mariah is going to want to play? Because Mariah likes Terraforming Mars quite a bit. Raquel likes it well enough. I have a copy. I purchased a copy. It's sitting here at home. It's still in shrink because I've played Empire's copy this whole time. I don't know. I don't know that I'm going to play it here. I think I'm going to play it a lot at Empire. It's going to be hard to get it in when there's all of the other, review pressure. But I happen to get in a bunch of plays of Terraforming Mars, and I still play Terraforming Mars several times a year. Here's one interesting little tidbit. When we first reviewed Terraforming Mars, I gave it a 5. And then on the double take, I gave it a 6. I'm like, I can't believe I gave this game a 5. This is so clearly a 6. I just feel so like it was one of the first times where I felt stupid. Not because anyone who doesn't like Terraforming Mars is stupid, but just that as much as I enjoyed it, I just couldn't believe I only gave it a 5. Well, Alex, this is going to be another Terraforming Mars. I'm giving it a 5.
Are you crazy?
A great game will rarely turn down a play of it.
What are you talking about?
I think I'm taking into account other things. I don't think I'm likely to play this here at the house, but I feel like I feel like a year from now, it's going to be a 6.
Sean, I'm your friend. I'm your friend.
Yeah.
Let me stop you from making this grave mistake ahead of time.
Yeah.
This is a game that you are going to play at SeanCon, perhaps more than once.
Yeah, probably once.
Okay, that's still plenty.
It's a game that will hit the table more than once at SeanCon. Yes.
Yes. At Empire, if we were still doing a weekly night, you remember with Terraforming Mars how that was on the table for months. Every single week, someone was playing that game.
Yeah.
That's going to be the case, and you're going to be wishing for some of these review games coming up that you were playing that game instead of
100%.
Ark Nova instead of this game.
Yeah,
whatever
100%,
game we're reviewing.
100%.
Why?
I can't get to an all-time favorite that's a contender for the top 10. Here's the thing. 4 years ago, I probably would have given this a 6 without a second thought.
Well, you didn't with Terraforming Mars, and this is the same situation.
Yeah. I feel like I've become a lot more protective of my 6s. So
outrageous.
I will almost certainly. And it's weird because I'm saying this. I'm not saying this to be provocative. I'm not saying this because there's negative thoughts on the guild. And I'm not trying to that. I am almost certain this will probably be a 6 this time next year.
Sean, I gave out a 6 recently to Azul Queen's Garden.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm already a little as a low 6, as this probably really a 5. I'm not sure. There are some cases where I'll give out a 6 and be a little too enthusiastic at the time and know it might dip back down more into 5 territory. This isn't one of those times for me.
Mm-hmm.
This is a not just a contender, but is probably in my top 10 of all time. This game is real good for me.
Yeah.
And I don't like quote unquote long games in a lot of cases.
Mhm.
But if there's a game that can get me so absorbed into it that I don't care about that as a factor, that is the sign of an excellently designed game. And
Cool.
I don't have some of the hangups other folks have of borrowed this mechanic from that, borrowed that mechanic there. I've been annoyed about that with games in the past. I think pretty recently with, what was it? Vampire game we reviewed
Oh,
from
the
Renegade.
craving, the urge, the hunger.
The Hunger, yeah. Yeah. So sometimes it doesn't play well.
I could eat.
I could eat the game. So Sean, I'll take another step back too, which is part of the discussion has been this game was overhyped or didn't live up to the hype.
Yeah.
And look, trust me, I've been like we've been on the other side of this debate with Oath, where that game had a passionate, intense following right off the bat, and I think it's maybe cooled off a little bit. It's just shy of an 8. It hasn't cracked an 8 on BGG, but still a well-loved game. And we both came out and I said, not only do I not like this game, I think The Emperor Has No Clothes. I think the hype on this game is completely out of line and doesn't belong. I think for me, Arc Nova absolutely belongs. Crunchy, interesting decisions, backed up by a theme that I really enjoy. The Zoo Tycoon kind of theme and experience. You blend it all together, and to me, you have a satisfying, crunchy experience that feels thematic, interesting, variable, and has me wanting to play it again even when I'm terrible at it. Even when I've built the world's pollutingest zoo, I don't care. I love this game. It's a clear 6. It's well deserving of all the praise it's gotten in my view. And I will say this. This will not be for everyone. If you are hesitant about long games, absolutely reason to be cautious with this one. If you don't like randomness, you tend to be more of a strategic player. You like having long-term strategy that you build up towards and more set decisions and not as much luck of the draw, randomness, that kind of thing. This game may not be for you. It is for me. Interesting decisions, tactical, well-designed, very fun, absorbing. Ton of praise for this one. A clear 6 for me. And Sean, I'm bummed that you're not on the Boxcars train with me on this one. You got to come take a ride.
I'll have a Boxcars award next year. Don't worry about it.
I don't understand why it has to wait a year for that.
Because I don't want to give a game a 6. I'm curious how much this is going to get back to the table and how much those times that I would normally say, oh, cool, let's get Terraforming Mars out, how often it's going to be replaced with this game. And here's the thing. I'm trying to think of 6s as a finite resource, right?
But we've talked about this.
I
Contender
know
for the top 10.
I know. I'm just trying to be more selective of my 6s.
When's the last 6 you gave out?
As far as reviews go,
no. When you last time on the street, you were just like, "You're a 6 of a person."
Well, no, but I'm saying like games that I've played that we haven't reviewed. Like I'd say Space Corp is a 6. That's you know, like if someone's like, "Hey, do you want to play Space Corp or do you want to play Arc Nova?" I'd be like, we're gonna play Space Corp." Like,
okay.
Hey, do you want to play 2-player Arc Nova or do you want to play Twilight Struggle? Oh yeah, we're gonna play Twilight Struggle. You know what I mean?
Okay.
That I'm
I
just
get
like,
it.
And it's not even close right now.
Okay. Fair.
And so here's the thing. I would think for the next 3 months, if someone says, "Do you want to play Terraforming Mars or do you want to play Arc Nova?" I will say Arc Nova because it's new, it's different. I'm still exploring it, and I'll be very happy to explore it. The question is, after I've played Arc Nova, and again, I think in the next 3 months, at least another 3 times, 4, 5, 6 maybe, then it's going to be the question of, okay, is it really going to compete with Terraforming Mars as far as which one to bring out? If not, then I'm like, yeah, then probably a very high, very solid 5. But if in some ways it replaces Terraforming Mars, Okay, then it should probably be a 6. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. Also, all the pressure from the negative guild members. Also that. I don't
Okay.
want them to think I'm a
Sean,
sellout
to
like
me,
you.
that's fair. I'll be a sellout. I don't care. Sean, I will say, Terraforming Mars, if I had a choice between this and Terraforming Mars, I'm going to pick Ark Nova any day of the week.
Okay.
I like what Ark Nova brings to the table more than Terraforming Mars. And Terraforming Mars, I've had the experience of. This feels long.
Yeah.
And I haven't had that with Ark Nova yet. Not to say that I won't, but I think, to me, this replaces Terraforming Mars in my headspace.
Okay.
And, I mean, some of that is theme, some of that is gameplay. I think it kind of bests it in both ways for me. So, I don't know. We'll see long term. But even during this show, Sean, this is unheard of. Abby has not played a game of this weight. Her tastes have gotten heftier and heftier. She hasn't gotten to this weight of game just yet. I am strongly considering buying my own copy of this game, which I think is inherently a little nuts.
Yeah.
A little nuts and perhaps unnecessary, but I've enjoyed this game this much. And I'll go this step further. I've only ever actively sought out upgrades for 2 games, Baseball Highlights 2045, first mention in a long time.
Yeah.
And Azul. Those are the 2 games I've kind of sought out upgrades for. Azul Summer Pavilion, to be specific. Other than that, I don't have upgraded games as by just not my jam. I could see myself not only buying this game, but upgrading this game.
All right, well, that's going to do it for the Duke's review of Ark Nova. A very solid 6 from Alex and a very solid 5, probably a 6 next year, from Sean.
You are listening to the Dukes of Dice, proud members of the Dice Tower Network. For other great shows in the network, check out dicetowernetwork.com. Back to Alex and Sean for this week's Dukes Double Take.
All right, Alex, how quickly can we do this double take?
Pretty fast. This is episode 250 we were looking back at. Flip the Channel, referencing rival networks. And, hey, moderator Chris from Flip the Table, who, in a moment I will never forget, came on and did a battle of wits, and Sean lost. And I've lost both of the other games since that we played of Mall Madness, but that's okay. The recorded one, I was triumphant. Sean, you did not review this. Abby did. Abby gave this on her scale, which is tangential to the 6-point scale, but not identical. Basically, her reaction if I ask her to play a game. She gave this a sure or a yeah. Part of her concern, and we both shared this, was we thought this would need kind of a cooling off period, that some of the repetition of the jokes might feel fresh if we kind of put this on the shelf for a couple of months and then brought it back out. But it needed a little cooling off period. But she thought it had good replayability, good even matchup, enjoyable game. For me, I said it was charming, really well themed, a solid Gateway Plus kind of game, but would not be my go-to for 2-player games. And that has proven absolutely true. I think this game does a lot of things right. At the time, I was between a 4 and a 5. I settled on a low 5. I think 4 is about where this belongs, and I haven't asked Abby. We have not played since, but my guess is that's about where it would be for her. Quick guild thoughts, Justin Jacobson. Networks is a top 10 game for me, and Rival Networks gives me that hit when there's only 2 of us. Not as dynamic as the original, especially with its wealth of expansion content, but it's a great push-pull game that feels like a beefier version of Battleline with a fun theme and great art. It's a 5 for me. BJ says, I like this one better than the original, but still wish I owned more content. I don't have the expansion, and I think it would freshen up the experience. There are a few of us that really enjoy this one as a date night game with our wives. Solid 4 for me, maybe more if I play the expansion. Adam Dalton says, I've only played the Rival Networks once. I'd really liked my play of the networks and saw the Rivals on Facebook Marketplace and picked it up. I was left quite underwhelmed. My wife and I haven't brought it out since. It lost the magic I remember of the networks. Could be, though, that it's just been so long that I'm looking back with nostalgia on that fun session. I guess that puts the Rivals rated a 3 on the Ducal scale, with potential to fall to a 2. And for me, I'm the opposite. The networks itself fell flatter than I was expecting, and the Rival Networks I liked better as a game and as an experience. So there you go, Sean.
All
a very
right.
fast double take of the rival networks. Low 5 to a 4 for me. I didn't ask Abby, but probably would be about that for her too.
All right. Well, let's look at the honorable mentions before we wrap things up from our Board Game Geek Guild for naming this episode. Justin Jacobson suggested Animal Planet. Was Animal Planet, is that a channel or is that a show?
Channel.
The channel. Okay. So yeah, talking about TV shows and then of course Arc Nova. So very good, Justin. Counselor.
Counselor? King Everything is Splendor suggested 2x2, referencing the Ark and sort of Noah's Ark and animals in that sense, but also referencing the two-player game of the rival networks.
And then Archie and what? Joshy and Gurr.
Okay.
I was getting ahead of myself. Joshy and Gurr, or Archie and Gurr, as he's now known. He suggested Arch Hova, which is Gil Hova, who's the designer of the rival networks. I'm tired. It's been a long week.
It's mixed. It's actually really clever. It's mixed with the Gateway Arch for Geekway to the West, and it's also very similar if you say it in total to Arc Nova, Arch Hova. Pretty good.
There you go.
Nick Hayes suggested Rivals of the Lost Ark. Sean, this was your pick.
Yeah, I like this
initially.
one a lot.
Yeah. You have the Rivals of Rival Networks, and then you have Arc Nova, so kind of a good combination of those two things.
Raiders of the Lost Ark reference.
Yes. A movie I have seen.
Good.
And then finally, Alex Pistecki.
Oh, you're going to do it? All right, that's fine. Go ahead. That's fine.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I'm going to do it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sean.
Please do it. I hope you do
You
it.
butchered the last one, Sean.
I
so
dare you to do it. Go ahead, Alex. Do it.
Alex Pistecki suggested that the increased listenership with a hot game would lend itself well to shameless Arc Nova reference. And Sean, you can vouch. This is absolutely a thing. When we talk about games that are more popular, more folks listen in. So, hi, folks listening in.
Yeah.
Sorry you listened to this very loopy, meandering episode, but hope you enjoyed it. See you next time we review something hot.
All right. Well, thank you, Guild. As always, couldn't do it without you. I mean, we could, but it just wouldn't. The names wouldn't be.
It wouldn't be as good of a show.
No, not at all. All right, well, that's going to do it then for episode 275. Thanks again to Steve O'Rourke, the Name Father, ZooTube. Until next time, this is Sean.
And also Alex.
And Duke you later, everybody.
Thank you so much for listening to the Dukes of Dice. Today's episode was recorded in the Duchy on May 20th, 2022. Our theme music provided by Carbohydro M from his Prime Legacy album. The Dukes of Dice are a proud member of the Dice Tower Network. For other great board gaming podcasts, check out DicetowerNetwork.com. And for all the latest in the Duchy, go to DukesOfDice.com. Find us on Twitter @Dukes of Dice. Join in conversations in our Board Game Geek Guild. Find us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks to our sponsor, Game Toppers LLC. Remember, if it's not a showstopper, it's not a game topper. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks. Until then, game on.